Hi, welcome to Every Further Mile. Today I'm recording in York, England, but I'll be talking about Mont Saint Michel. We were in Mont Saint Michel about a month and a half ago, and we just wanted to let you know whether or not we thought Mont Saint Michel was worth the hype. Well, the short answer is yes, absolutely. Definitely worth the hype. But there is a long answer. The long answer is that Mont Saint Michel is worth the hype to the right people, and it won't be worth the hype to other people. So if you want to know which one of those people you are, keep watching, because we're going to go through our pros and cons and help you decide which sort of person you are. On the coast of Normandy, France, located about 2 hours southwest of Juno Beach, you'll find a fortified abbey known as Mont Saint Michel. This UNESCO Heritage Site began construction about 1300 years ago and has undergone several constructions and even some reconstructions since. Like I said before, we want to help you decide whether or not this heritage site is worth the hype. So let me tell you a few things about what we think makes it worth the hype, followed by one thing that we think doesn't really make it worth the hype. And in the end, we hope that you'll be able to decide whether or not it's going to be worth the hype for you. Something that makes it worth the hype is it's free. Well, free-ish. You do have to pay for parking, so it's about €8 for a car, about €15 for a camper van. One of the things that makes it worth the hype is its uniqueness. There is no other place like this on the planet. In fact, the only time I can really say that I've seen anything like it would be in Disney's Tangled. If you haven't seen Tangled, that's okay. Maybe you've been to Alhambra. If you've been to Alhambra, it's also a walled village. It's similar in a lot of ways, also very different. You can see our video about it right over here. Speaking of Alhambra, one of the things that might make it not worth your while is just how busy it is. We went in late June, which was a very busy time for Mont Saint Michel. Any time during the summer, especially during school summer holidays for France and the rest of Europe, Mont Saint Michel is going to be packed, especially in the daytime. But let's go back to some of the things that make it worth its while. It looks super cool. It just does. It just looks amazing. The buildings in the village are from the 1500s, so you have this really cool medieval vibe. You climb up and up and up the hill to see these very old abbey. Very cool stone structures, and the views are terrific. The place is gorgeous. You're never going to get a view like it again. It's also a very well preserved UNESCO Heritage Site. If you're unfamiliar with the UNESCO Heritage Sites, what you really need to know is it's kind of like a certificate of authenticity for people who are very concerned about history and history preservation. And aside from that, just know that UNESCO Heritage properties are usually very significant sites. They're not going to throw this on just anything. UNESCO Heritage Sites, they have to bring a certain something, and usually when you see UNESCO Heritage Site on something, it's going to be awesome, especially if you're a history buff like me. But something that kind of makes it not worth the hype are the shops. There are so many shops in the village. You would think this is going to be a really fun shopping experience. However, a vast majority of those shops are selling the exact same souvenirs. And it kind of feels like they're just blowing out really old souvenir inventory. Really, like there's just a lot of the very same souvenir shops. That was sort of a bummer. So I've already kind of touched on this, but one of the things it really has going for it is that it is a history buff's paradise. From its significance during World War II, the significance during invasions from England, significance for Normandy, its significance for the Protestant Reformation. There are so many things that have happened in and around this location that any history buff is just going to be salivating with the amount of heritage and the amount of culture and the amount of history that is just oozing from this place. If you're a history buff, hands down, you're just going to love this place. So another thing that makes it worthwhile are the very cool restaurants that it has here. Like I said, some of the buildings in this area are from like the 1500s. A lot of those buildings are restaurants. You get to sit inside a restaurant that's 300 to 500 years old, and you get to enjoy a certain historic ambiance. Also, if you're a bit of a nerd like me, you might want to know what it's like to sort of be in like a fantasy tavern. Again, this is going to give you that feeling. I will put this little bit of note in here. Our family is vegetarian, so it did make it a little more difficult to find the restaurants. But if you're a seafood lover or just someone who enjoys, your meat and potatoes, there's not a restaurant you'll lose at here. But of course, there will be another thing that's going to make it not worth your while for some people. Accessibility. If you're in a wheelchair or you have other mobility issues, or perhaps you're just really out of shape, this place might not be for you. I can't imagine getting anywhere in this place in a wheelchair. I don't even think it's possible. If you have a walker, again, like there are so many narrow steps here that I just can't see it being possible. If you have a cane or just walking is difficult in general, you really want to second guess whether or not you're going to come here and be prepared to give up if you do. It is free, so you can take that chance and maybe try it at night where there's less people and decide then. But just know that if you do have accessibility or mobility issues, this very well might not be the place for you. Lastly, I want to tell you about the streets. The streets are all cobblestone, they wind, they have this very medieval feel, they're very narrow, the buildings kind of come up over top of you. There's just dozens of small little alleyways that are just super narrow, super cool. You just feel like you're gonna go into like this magical world, or maybe you're gonna get shanghaied and put on a pirate boat. The alleyways are very cool. The street leads all the way to this abbey and cathedral that's at the top of the mountain. The abbey has just gorgeous views, both inside and out. You can walk the walls. It's a really cool experience. You sort of go up these stairs and you can walk around the walls of the fortified town, which of course leads you to these towers that you can stand in and sort of imagine what it'd be like to be a watcher on the walls, say 500 years ago, you know, holding your crossbow and your halberd and whatever. It's just a really cool experience. And then of course for the people who really enjoy that sort of the darker side of history, there are several sort of dungeon and dungeon-like spaces here. It used to be a jail at one point, so there's all kinds of places where you're gonna find lots of really neat darker history stories. So if you like to know the dark side of things, you're gonna find that here as well. And lastly, the one thing that's gonna make it not worth your while, and again it ties a little bit into the accessibility, but this really is for everybody, there's really no place to sit. In the entire place, there might be 4 benches, and I might even be over counting that. There's really literally nowhere to sit, with the exception of the restaurants. And in the Abbey, there are several benches that you can sit at. However, it does feel kind of awkward to sit in the Abbey if there is a service going on. Unless, of course, that's something that you would enjoy, in which case it's the perfect spot to sit and enjoy a service. At nighttime, this is a little different. You could probably sit in the steps at nighttime, but in the daytime, it'd be a little obnoxious to sit on such a crowded street on the steps. It really would. So I'm hoping that this sort of pros, cons sort of list has really helped you decide whether or not it'd be worth it for you. Because everybody's different. Everybody's tastes are different. Everybody weighs things differently. It was 100% worth it to us. Don't know if it's worth it to you, but if it is worth it to you, or you think it will be, we do have 5 tips that's going to make it even better. Tip number 1 is go twice. Now we don't mean go twice in the year or in the week, we mean go twice in the same day. You're going to want to go in the daytime. In the daytime you're going to go and do all the shops, you're going to probably stop at a restaurant, you're going to want to hit the museums, and of course you're going to want to hit the Abbey. That's sort of the big show. But yeah, do all of the indoor things that you can during the daytime. But don't try to get any selfies or shots during the daytime on any of the outdoor things, except for, again, at the top of the hill where the Abbey is. That part is shut down at night, so be sure to get your pictures up there at daytime. However, everywhere else, don't bother taking shots, because you come back at night and the place is basically empty. It was very easy to take your pictures on the castle walls, in front of stores, all those sorts of things, and in the restaurants are a lot less busy at night. So if you can and you have the time, see it twice in the same day. That's the way to do it. That's what we did. We loved it. Pro tip number 2, stay nearby. This kind of ties into the first tip. If you're going to go twice, you're going to need somewhere close by to sleep. Now, we stayed at a hotel that was just outside of the Mont Saint Michel. It was very cheap. It was in a tiny little town that I can't remember the name of, kind of town that if you blinked while you drove through it, you'd miss it completely. But it was very cheap and it was quite comfortable. There are hotels right inside Mont Saint Michel, and for an extra 100 euros, you could stay right inside. And that would be a really cool experience. And I think if I was to do it again, I might do that. Something that we noticed on the bus is that there were also several hotels just outside of Mont Saint Michel, very easy to walk into. They'd probably be worth your money. And then lastly, when we were in the parking lot, we noticed that there was a campground right beside the parking lot. Don't know what the prices are, but might be something to look into, especially if you're someone who enjoys camping or that campground experience. And European campgrounds are pretty awesome. At least if the campground in Barcelona is any indication. So number 3, we've talked about it a couple times now, the parking lot. So the parking was confusing. When you come into the parking area, you sort of go through these roundabouts and you follow signs until you finally see a roundabout that turns you off to parking. And then you have to follow these signs. A lot of signs aren't super clear, but they do have a picture. And usually the picture will have a car or a motorcycle or a camper van. And you're looking for any sign that also says open and that has a picture of the car. It didn't really look like we were supposed to pull in the first time we went around, so we actually ended up circling the whole thing again and then wound up in the right spot eventually. But do know that just if you follow the picture of the car, you're in the right spot. Just make sure it says open, not closed. When you do park and you pull into the parking lot, you take a ticket from the gate. Keep that ticket in your wallet or in your pocket if you have a pocket that's not going to bend it, and bring it with you. Because when you come back from the castle, you're actually going to scan that ticket in a machine that isn't in the parking lot. It's actually outside of the parking lot as you come back into it. So you're going to want that in your pocket so you don't have to go to your car and then go all the way back to the machine. Tip number 4, bus versus walking. So when you arrive in the parking lot, you really do have 2 choices. Well, actually, technically you have 3 choices. You can take the bus to the castle, you can walk to the castle, and you can take a horse-drawn carriage to the castle. We didn't take the horse-drawn carriage, and it does leave a lot less frequently than the bus, so we didn't even really consider it. If that's something that would really appeal to you, then you might want to look into it. But right now I'm going to tell you about the bus and the walking. When you go to the bus stop, it's very easy. You just look for the big sign. You're going to see that in the video. But just know that you stop for the bus leaves quite frequently, especially in the daytime, less frequently at night, but it still comes and goes at night. And that bus will take you almost to the castle itself. Taking the bus will take about 15 minutes, give or take, especially considering how long you have to wait for the bus. Now walking, on the other hand, will take you about half an hour. It's a very beautiful walk, especially in good weather. If you're someone who really enjoys walking, you're probably actually going to want to take the walking option. But if you're someone that's sort of half and half, or someone who would prefer to take a bus because you're about to walk all day, the bus is definitely the way I would go. And if I was doing it again, what I would do is I would take the bus going in, and if I felt like walking coming back, that's when I'd take the walk. Lastly, our last tip is that the area is not urbanized. You would think that being a UNESCO Heritage Site, that Mont Saint Michel has been a popular tourist site for the last 200 years, that there would be a lot more buildup. That the town nearby would have grocery stores, restaurants, a big hotel, that sort of thing, but no. This place is still very rural. All the towns are very small. Most towns don't have a gas station, let alone a variety store, and definitely not a grocery store. All of your normal necessities are not easily had in this area. So if you are coming to Mont Saint Michel, just know that if you're staying in the general vicinity, pick up anything you think you're going to need ahead of time. So that's our video on Mont Saint Michel and whether or not it's worth it. It was definitely worth it to us. We hope it would be worth it to you, but again, maybe it wouldn't be right for you, and I hope our video helped you decide that. We're so glad that you joined us today. If you're already a subscriber, thanks for watching the video. If you're not a subscriber yet, make sure you subscribe below. And whether you're a subscriber or you're just joining us for the first time, we'd really love to hear about your last castle experience. Where did you go? Was it worth it? Do you love castles? Tell us all about it. And remember, keep following us every further mile.